Hello and welcome. This is Rasheem with the Counter Narrative. Tonight's episode is Motherhood at the Intersections, and I am joined by several fantastic, wonderful, beautiful Black mothers to have this conversation, to share some of their insights, experiences, and their daughters are all of various ages. They're all over the country. So I'm just going to hand it over to them and give them an opportunity to introduce themselves to you. And I guess I'll start with you, Tamara. So if you could tell everyone your name, where are you, and how old is your daughter?
Okay, the basics. Okay, I'm Tamara Thomas. I live in Haymarket, Virginia right now. I'm originally from New York City. My daughter is 9, almost 10. And yeah, so I'm here to talk about her.
All right. Does she know you're talking about her? No, let me quit.
She loves it. She doesn't mind.
She loves it. All right. And Gwinnett, the same for you and anything else that you want us that you think we should know about you.
Okay. My name is Gwinnetta Curry, and I am currently in Lake Charles, Louisiana. I have 2 little girls, ages 4 and 6 years old. I am a assistant professor. This is my first year in my position, so that's it.
All right, academic mommy. That is no joke. And last but definitely not least, Ariel.
Hi, I'm Ariel. Ariel Wright Tinker. I have 1 little girl. She is 1 year old, and I am in Jacksonville, Florida.
Nice. It sounds like we're all on the East Coast too.
East Coast.
I'm from North Carolina, so yes, I love the East Coast.
We're all on the East Coast. So the first question that I have for everyone, and anyone and everyone can kind of tackle this and just kind of give your standpoint on it. But from the various years that each one of us has been mothers, what does motherhood mean to you?
That is like the hardest first question.
I know, right?
I'm going to say motherhood has meant different things to me at every step and stage in every year. For 1 year, motherhood was milk, milk and diapers. That's all it was, making sure the milk was there and the diapers got changed. But I mean, just motherhood in general, I guess, I know we'll probably get into it later, but it's just parenting and raising a child, being an adult.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, mothering to me, I've been thinking about this question ever since you sent them earlier. It was like, oh man, how will I describe motherhood? I think I've always wanted to have kids. And when I finally had my first daughter, I was full of excitement, and it just meant a lot to be a mother. And you see this small, beautiful Black baby looking at you for everything, right? And then you watch them grow, and it's just amazing to watch them go from each stage to each stage. But what does it mean to be a mother? I think it's more of like nurturing and caring for this human being that needs you for everything at the moment. So.
Mm-hmm. Asia, you want to tackle it?
It means that I am responsible for this other human and guiding her along this journey of life. So personally, I guess it's meant that I share myself with another person and take that responsibility seriously. That there's this human that is going to affect the entire planet in one way or another. And I get to, guide her along that journey. And there's this piece of me that she shares. So we are connected, and she's of me, but she's her own person.
Right. Did I give you an opportunity to introduce yourself?
No.
Oh, please do. Please do.
I am Asia. I'm from originally from Ohio, but I live in Baltimore. And I am an actress, a writer, and an educator. Currently, I teach drama, and my daughter is 13. Pray for me.
Oh, that's right.
Man.
And what would you say motherhood means to you, Ariel?
Yeah, so motherhood is definitely a journey. Even though I only have 1 year in it definitely changes from day to day. Whether it's being, her advocate or, her first teacher, it's definitely a journey. And it's definitely ever changing.
Yeah, I really appreciate like so much of where everyone has said in terms of like none of us identified necessarily with like motherhood being somehow linked to biology, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was about the activity of it. It was about the nurturing, the caring, and also that acknowledgement that it's going to change as the child develops because it's going to be like centered around their needs, their physical needs, their emotional needs. And then I really love what you brought up, Ariel, about advocating. I don't think people really realize how much of motherhood is advocacy work.
Yes.
Exactly.
Right? Like navigating relationships, building networks and communities around this child, deciding who she can be around, who she can't be around, what neighborhood she can, all of these things, building networks and advocacy.
Right. And advocating for, and my daughter is in the first grade now, but I had experienced this last year when she started in kindergarten, that I really had to advocate on her behalf because as a kindergarten, she couldn't really challenge the teacher in that way. And so I had to step in and say, and advocate on her behalf to make sure she was getting everything she needed. And I'm sure we'll get to this more in the discussion. When you have a little Black girl in the class and she's the only one, sometimes you're faced with some challenges that have to be addressed, right? And you have to be that one to step in and advocate for her to make sure she's not being marginalized in that space.
Absolutely. That's definitely real. Yeah, does anyone else since we're on the topic and talking about it right now, other ways in which you can remember and think of that you have advocated for your child at different levels?
Absolutely. I think advocating with me came in a lot with family members, more so than like school or anything, because when you're a new mother, you have everyone coming at you and wanting to give you advice and packaging their parenting style, onto you and saying, well, why don't you do this? And then if you don't do something like them, trying to place that guilt on you, and also the fear, well, if you don't do this, then this is going to happen. So I've had to advocate, with family members, essentially sometimes saying, well, maybe not to them directly, but having the understanding that there's certain places she's not going to go because I have to be aware she's going to be treated a certain way. And when you're not with them, basically you're not there to tell someone, hey, don't speak to my child that way or don't treat her this way. So there's some spaces you just have to keep them out of. So with family, I've had to say, take a step back.
Right. Absolutely. So again, if you are just tuning in, this is the counter narrative. Tonight's segment is Motherhood at the Intersection. There's a comment in the on the YouTube channel from Stephanie. Stephanie says, I have advocated a lot in the realm of custody and visitation in the best interest of my child. And I totally get that. And that's interesting, Tamara, what you brought up about advocating with other family members, because that's real.
Yeah.
That's a real thing. I can say one of the things that has come up with my daughter is I've always taught her that she is the boss of her body. Like from day one, you are the boss of your body. And I wish that somebody would have explained to me that I was the boss of my body, because I didn't, necessarily feel like that. But when things come up where family members, they want affection, harmless, in a lot of cases, harmless. They want, like, give me a hug, give me a kiss. And I tell her, you have the right to say no to anybody for any type of touch that you are uncomfortable with, and you don't have to kiss and hug Uncle so-and-so and Auntie so-and-so. And giving her that message is good, and I'm glad that she got it. But I have found in situations where I have had to give Uncle so-and-so the message that she said that she don't want to give you no kiss.
Yes. Yes.
So back up. So that is something that is very real in terms of, like, that's an aspect of motherhood. That is part of what I feel like is some of the invisible work.
Yes.
Of mothering that people may not see. What are some ways in which you guys feel like the role of mother may differ from the role of father?
I think it's that emotional connection, because from the very beginning, the mom is the one who's, she's carried the baby, she's nurturing or nursing the babies from the very beginning. And so that emotional connection is going to be different from, mom to dad. So I feel like that's where it just kind of differs in that way. Mom is going to be the nurturer.
I agree with that. In my household, overwhelmingly, when the child is crying about something or heard about something, they come to me because they know I would, nurture them. And my husband, on the other hand, well, he'll give them hugs and everything too, but it's just different when it comes from mommy, right? So yeah, we have different approaches in that. And I don't think one is, bad or worse, but it's just different, right? And I think mothers do bring something different to the table when it comes to, like, nurturing their children in different moments, right?
Yeah.
One of the viewers made a comment and said it's intrinsically different because the first relationship is formed in the womb. I think one of the things that I feel like I found, and I would love to ask fathers what fatherhood means to them. Because one of the things that I've learned, that I've heard, because I've been doing research on Black motherhood, and one of the things that seems to stand out is that mothers to motherhood, there's aspect of it that's so becomes such a large part of their identity and has such a huge impact on their life, like career choices, where you live. And I also hear from moms that they feel like one of the ways in which their role is different from the father is that it's optional for the father not to be there. Like, they have to be there, but they have felt like, or had the belief at the very least, that men felt like it was an option for them not to be there. But mothers is like, I have to, like, I don't, there's 2 or 3 mothers said, I don't get to leave. I don't get to go away. I don't get to just, like, say I'm not gonna pay for this or do this. So that's something that's interesting in terms of how I've heard people describe it. Is anybody had any similar or totally different responses to that in terms of difference between motherhood and fatherhood?
I would say I have a different experience. This last year, my husband and I, we have what in the academic world they call the 2-body problem, where I was working in one place and he's working in another. And it was just more feasible for me to go away and come back. So I would fly back and forth, right? And he was fine taking care of the girls when I had to be away, right? But I know there's some women that will say they could never do that. And some people actually judge and say, how dare you leave your children, right? And it's like, they're with their father. I'm not leaving them unattended, So some people look at it differently. So that's been my experience, put it that way.
No, I have totally, there was 2 incidents. I mean, there's more than 2 incidences that have come up for me, but there's 2 incidences that come to my mind. One is, I'm currently in a doctoral program right now. And it was one day where I was just we have a lounge area to study called the PhD room. And so I was in the PhD room and I was studying for hours upon hours upon hours. And a professor who knows that I'm a mother passed by and was like, "Where is your daughter?" And I was just like, is she supposed to be with me? Like, am I not a scholar too?
Yes.
You know? And there was another incident that I went to the National Black Social Workers Conference. And there was a woman there who said, "Wow, you know, the conference is 5 days. You've been here for all 5 of the days. Like, where's your daughter for these 5 days?" I was like, "She do have more than one parent, you know?"
Yes.
So I think I can see that coming up, you know what I mean, as a thing.
Absolutely.
You know, you touched on something. I wonder if that's a woman thing when people do that or a Black woman thing. Because sometimes I feel like it's automatically assumed that every single one of us is a single mother with no support system whatsoever. So if they see me and they don't see my daughter, it's like, what happened to her? Is she dead? You know, where's she at? Like, it never dawns on them. She could be with my husband. She could be with, I don't feel like I see it as much within the workplace with them doing it to other women.
And I think, you know what, another thing that I think comes up is even with that word single, sometimes it is assumed that there is no support system.
Yeah, correction. That's what I meant when I said not single as in, you know, single and mingle. I mean,
right.
as in they feel like there's no co-parent there. They automatically assume there's no co-parent.
Right.
So where could your daughter possibly be?
Right. And I think that that's also a difference in like the way that communities of color parent, period, married or not. Like there's a communal aspect of it that, for example, my sister who is married, her daughter is coming to stay with me for the summer. Right. So that's like, you know what I mean? That's just a whole different way, I think, of parenting that is not the traditional, the only people who are parenting or responsible for the development of this human being are the people who biologically created.
Right. And I think in the Black community, historically, that's been the case, where the community has stepped in and helped. Like it was a village taking care of these children, right? It wasn't just this particular household. And I'm actually teaching a class in the fall called Black Family Studies. I'm looking at some of Robert Staples' work, historical work. And so we will touch base on how the community as a whole is responsible for these families. And it's not like these children are stuck alone.
Right. And then there's also women-centered networks that do a lot around parenting. If you are just tuning in, I see we have, it looks like 6 new viewers. This is The Counter Narrative. Tonight's episode is Motherhood at the Intersections, and more specifically at the intersections of race and gender. If you'd like to leave a comment and say something to our guest, or if you have a question, feel free to go ahead and type it in the chat. The chat is over to the right. It'll say live chat. You'll see some comments already there. If you haven't already, also please feel free to subscribe, share this out with other people, other Black mothers, or soon to be Black mothers who may want to look and see how other people are doing it. So I'm going to go ahead and read some of the comments. One person wrote, infancy mom as the caretaker and dad as the playmate. They also say it's the same reason why men can disconnect from a child. They help to create. Paris wrote a note, but then she retracted it. Another person also said, we judge other moms very harshly. What do you guys think about that?
We do judge other moms very harshly. And, you know, when I became a mom, I didn't have a strong network of people in my city. So I reached out to, different mom groups on Facebook and just, virtually, electronically, all that. Um, and you see that other moms are like, shouldn't, use cloth diapers and she shouldn't free range parent. And, there's so many names for how we parent and why we parent the way we parent. But, they're like mom gangs. Like this mom group over here is doing this thing and that group is doing this thing. And it's just like, if you're not on what we're on, then bye. We don't have time for it. And it's just like we're all out here learning how to be moms. We're, in the struggle together because every day is different. So cut each other some slack.
Right.
I agree.
Right. Because none of us got it all figured out.
Exactly.
No.
I totally agree with you on that.
Yeah.
I would also say that I've noticed a lot of times when people feel like they're being judged, not saying that it doesn't happen, but a lot of times it's because they're judging themselves. I think we judge ourselves more because I know, I'm haven't experienced much of that, nor do I judge other mothers, but I have had a lot of people come to me and say that they feel judged. And oftentimes, my big thing on judgment period is usually like when you're feeling judged by people, it's because you're judging yourself. And if you stop judging yourself, then you won't maybe it just doesn't affect you. I don't know if it's that you don't feel it or that it just doesn't even enter into my face,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Asia, I think that's very real, especially in terms of judging yourself. Because I always, like, every little thing that I feel like I've gotten better with it, but I definitely be thinking about, like, oh my gosh, years later, is she going to be on somebody's couch talking about how this just ruined her? Because it's so easy to get, I feel like it's so easy to get something wrong. Like, whether I feel like I might have gone too far with a punishment, or am I not giving enough time? Am I focusing on myself too much? Like all of these different things come up in our mind, I think, because we want to do a good job on this person, and we don't necessarily want her to have to get therapy because of something that we've done. Not that there's anything wrong with therapy, but it's like, it's going to be enough out there without me jacking her up.
Right.
Right.
So that's very real. Asia, I want to go back to you and ask you a question. And we talked about what motherhood means. Could you start us off by sharing, what does Black motherhood mean to you?
I think I talk a lot in general in life about double consciousness. And it's interesting because I was talking to a friend of mine who went to my same HBCU and didn't know what that meant. So I was surprised. So if there's anybody who's kind of unclear in my head, and I think it's a W.E.B. Du Bois theory.
Yes.
Thank you. But for me, it's this constant awareness of who I am as myself, and then and that I'm Black, and that people are receiving me. I guess it kind of goes back to that judgment piece, but it's real, as who I am and as being Black, right? So with my daughter, it's that same awareness of raising her as who she is, and then also dealing with the fact that she is Black, and particularly that she is Black in America. And that's been a very interesting experience, especially, I was going to say especially for little girls, but I have been listening to Ta-Nehisi Coates' audiobook, so I would say it's a whole different story for boys. But with girls, there's a lot that comes up around aesthetics and self-hate and the media and stereotyping. So it's been a lot of conversations with my child around self-image and, consciousness and awareness. And it's been a really interesting journey, as far as that's concerned, because I'm biracial. She's Black, but considers herself biracial. She goes to a very diverse school, but she's very conscious of race matters. And she talks a lot about, she just wrote this amazing paper on this dismantling of the white power structure based on the Part-Time Diary of an American Indian. But she'll also make comments, sometimes I asked her one day this week, do your white friends know that you're racist? And she told me about some meme where the guy's kind of going, you guys know the one that's like, you can't be racist if you're racist towards everyone. So that was what she said. So she has some very like adolescent, very interesting, very highly intelligent, so very smart, whereas people kind of take her as an adult, but with the emotional maturity of a 13-year-old. Mm-hmm. And so I have to, as I'm having conversations, keep in mind that just because she's really, really bright doesn't mean that she has the wisdom and the emotional maturity to process things fully. And it takes a lot of patience and education on my part, and a lot of questions, and a lot of questioning, like, what makes you think that?
Right. Absolutely. I want us to say more about that aesthetic piece. I'm going to go over to our chat because I see the chat section is popping a bit. If you are just joining, this is the counter narrative. This segment is motherhood at the intersections of race and gender. If you haven't already, please feel free to subscribe so that you can stay up to date with the latest content. It also encourages me, and we can share and spread the word about, providing the counter narrative. So going to the chat side, to the chat room, Paris says, side note, I hate how we have to use white and word to describe our context. We have to insert village to counter traditional to make clear we've always done this. We woke up with this village. And I think that definitely speaks to it, right? I woke up like this. Paris say, I woke up with this village. Like, y'all think y'all come, whoever the y'all are, I think y'all coming up with a new context, with a new concept. Like my grandmother, was doing this village. My great grandmother was doing this village thing. This village thing was the thing that kept us alive, when we first got here to this country. So I think that's fantastic. And then if anyone want to comment on that more before I go to the next comment in the chat room.
I'm sorry, I definitely do, and I don't want to but I think that in many ways we're returning to it. I think that some communities have always done it, and it is how we survive. But then as we have, integrated more into society, I feel like in some ways to our own detriment, we created this whole strong, independent woman stuff where we feel like we have to do stuff alone. And people are walking around anxious and depressed and crazy because they've bought into this notion that they're supposed to do it alone. So for some of us, we've always done it, but some people are just figuring out that they need to return, or we need to return to that model, because I think it's why a lot of people are losing their minds.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you just brought up I feel like something that really deserves attention, and that is the strong Black woman trope. And how this has a specific, in a lot of ways, defense mechanism can in some ways lead us to have more mental health issues, be stressed out more, because we're coping with all of these different things and we're trying to do it by ourselves. And we feel like if we don't do it by ourselves, then that means something. It's 10 o'clock. Thank you, computer. That means something bad about us and who we are. Like, I'm supposed to do it by myself. If I don't, what does that mean about me as a woman? So I think that deserves some attention. If anybody wants to speak more on the pros and cons, if you want, of the strong Black woman trope, and how does that show up in motherhood?
Well, the cons, I'll just speak to new motherhood, because that's what I know right now. I feel like so my background is therapy, therapy and mental health and that sort of arena, social work, clinical social work. And a lot of the people who I was working with, a lot of the clients who I had coming in were the women who had, bought into that strong the strong Black woman complex. And I feel like in new motherhood, that's where a lot of the postpartum depression comes in.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people, aren't talking about it. They don't know the symptoms. They don't know how to recognize postpartum, but then they don't know how to recognize depression. Sometimes we have, these things that we're doing. Oh, I have to do it this way. I have to do it like this. I have to do it right now. And then we're yelling at the kids. We're always sad. We're depressed. We're anxious. Those are all things that we have to talk about and, actually talk to someone else about, and get the help, because there are cons. Our kids sometimes are thinking, oh, mom doesn't love me because she's always yelling at me. But, mom may not be able to help it because she's depressed, she's anxious, she's all these things that no one's talking about.
Mm-hmm. No, that's definitely real. So I'm going to go over back to the chat. Again, if you're just joining us, this is the counter narrative. Tonight's topic is motherhood at the intersections. So Jacqueline Miller says, excellent topic. As a life strategist, particularly for moms, the discussion definitely resonates. Hurt people hurt people. People who are judged tend to judge others. It's cynical. And what is the I guess the person I maybe address this to, but anybody could tackle it, is Ariel. The impact of a mother being stressed, having depression, trying to do all these things by herself and feeling like she has to, or, what is the impact on her motherhood, her approach to motherhood, or her strategies? Like, how does that show up? Or have you seen anything around how that could possibly show up?
Well, I think it shows up sometimes in a detrimental way. A lot of the cases that I used to get were at the end of the road. So I would get clients when there was neglect issues, there was abuse issues. And so, someone who's broken and at the end of their road may not see, okay, this is abuse, this is neglect. I'm not doing right by my kids. So, sometimes it does get to a point where the judgment can be clouded, and it can lead to other things like the abuse and neglect. It doesn't always have to lead there, but sometimes, the strategy to motherhood may be compromised. The mom isn't maybe thinking things through all the way. Maybe she's thinking about her best interest instead of the child's best interest.
Mm-hmm. Paris in the chat says, I judge mothers all the time. I notice it and I feel bad about it. I think it stems from decisions I've made to not have children, not have children rather than the woman. I think it stems from decisions I've made not to have children rather than the woman. Paris, if you could say more about that last sentence, I'm not clear on that all the way. That first part, I judge mothers all the time. I notice it and I feel bad about it. I think that is, I do think that that's something that's present. And I also think it's like what Asia said in terms of like, we also judge ourselves. I think there's some level of judgment of Black women in general around respectability politics, around feeling like, there's certain things that I can't be sexual and be a mother. You know what I mean? Like little things like that. Mm-hmm. Or like, oh man, her skirt's kind of short. Like, yeah, she's a grown woman. She, so I think that I think that the judgment of black women is there, and I think that it can be particularly heightened when she's a mother.
Yes.
Because we put all of these things on what it means to be a mother. So I'm going to read more from the chat. Hey, Tachi, Steph. Let me go ahead and do a quick shout out also to everyone who is still watching us at the moment and took the comments for being here. Paris, I appreciate your engagement. Jacqueline, thank you for your comment. Tachi, thank you for shouting out. Tia, hello. Thank you for shouting out. If you are here, I see there's a few more watching. If you are here and you'd like to have a comment or a question for our panelists, please do drop it in. Tia says, great topic. And she also says, a false sense of hope when we're not taught to keep hope alive. And then another person says, I choose not to have children. It's my issue, not the mothers. Oh, like a person. So what Paris was saying earlier with her comment is with her judging mothers all the time. She says she chooses not to have children, and that's her issue. She realizes it, but she judges them and realizes it. So there was something that Asia said earlier that I wanted to get back to, and that was around the aesthetics of mothering a little brown girl. Right? So let's talk about that, because it is real. That hair thing, that skin thing, it's so real. So why don't you start us off, Asia, since you kind of brought it up? What did you mean when you brought it up?
Well, my first thought just now was that, here she comes, speaking of which. Hi, baby.
Hi, Sonia.
Hi.
Is that could do a whole nother show on this whole black girl hair policing that's happening.
Yes.
And so it's interesting that she would pop her little head in, because we're halfway through lock maintenance over here, and I stopped to do the show. But it's, being raised on Disney movies. It's the blonde hair, blue-eyed, no matter how conscious I thought I was, no matter how many African dance classes we went to and how many museum exhibits and how many stories. I mean, I was reading her hip-hop books when she was in the womb, despite all of that, she still had the self-hatred issues. She still had the I want to be more European issue. She still wanted to press her hair. She still has, like I said earlier, some stereotypes about her own race. That, there's a lot of conversation about things that she's bought into from the media. And it, I was the same way. I went through it as well. And, my parents had to work really hard, both of them, to get me to accept that the European aesthetic is the definition of beauty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think that hits on what you said before too, in terms of like the media. Like you do all of these things, you could be like, I'm black, y'all, and I'm black, y'all, and I'm black and black. But you're not with her all the time. She still reads books that they have in school. There's still stuff that they show on television that shapes what beauty is supposed to look like. Gwinnett, I saw you doing a lot of head nodding. You want to comment on this aesthetic beauty and raising little brown girls?
Absolutely. So, like I said, my oldest daughter's 6. And so ever since she's been growing up, I've always given her these books, big hair. And I don't care because she has a lot of hair, right? Getting her to accept her curly hair. And there's all these other little books about I am black, I am unique, and so I had her reading those, one of the first books she ever read, and kind of going through all the shades of blackness and showing that they all are beautiful and pretty much accepting yourself for who you are. And like I said, she goes to school and she's the only black girl in her class, and her little best friend is white. So she's like, oh, I want to have straight hair. I'm like, after all this work, you still go to school and now you want straight hair. I was like, no, baby, it doesn't work that way. And I just kind of affirm her every day about being beautiful, being smart, and she can do anything that she, put her mind to. We have a little thing that we go through, just kind of to keep that in her mind, that you don't have to change who you are or what you are, and you are beautiful and accepting yourself the way you are. But it is a challenge because, like I said, she goes to the school and she's surrounded by this every day. And so she starts to identify, well, this person's beautiful and why isn't my hair this way? And she'll ask those questions. So a lot of books, we do a lot of books and a lot of, affirming each other.
Tamara, your daughter's around the same age as my daughter. My daughter is 9. She won't be 10 as soon as yours is.
Right.
What are some of your experiences with that whole thing?
Well, I've been pretty fortunate, like the experience she's had thus far. When I was growing up, my mom is from Alabama, Southern Baptist. When you got to a certain age, it was like a coming of age thing where that hair was straightened.
Uh-huh.
And if every little, bead was in place and something was springing up, then you were unkept, So that's what it was like for me when I was younger. So when I got, to that, I was like patiently waiting to get to that, 8, 9-year-old age where she would finally press my hair with the hot comb, because I was in a private school. I was surrounded by mostly white girls. There were very few people of color in general in the school. So that was my experience, and it was a hostile environment, to say the least. So when my daughter, when I had my daughter, I had already, before she was even thought of, I already had, a lot of things in place that I knew that I didn't want to do. So the first thing was, I've worn my hair every way. I do weave, I do wigs, I do natural, I do perm. But I made sure that for a certain amount of years in her life, what she mostly saw was mama with her big old afro, so that was normalized for her.
Mm-hmm.
I was also fortunate to where we lived. It's a very transient area. It's new. So it's a good blend of kids. It's white, it's black, it's everything. But her friends who are other little black girls, they've got locks and they've got fros. And so there are a few girls that straighten their hair in her grade, but they're the minority instead of the majority.
Mm-hmm.
So she doesn't feel the same pressures. I also lucked out because she wasn't one of those Disney girly girls. She liked superhero movies and she liked anime. And so there wasn't that same like push for like, this is beautiful, this is what gets the prince. It was more like, she liked the badass characters, she liked the superheroes and such. So I've been fortunate so far. We'll see what middle school brings.
Right.
And high school.
Well, yeah, I feel like with my daughter, she definitely started off where she kind of was like, she wanted her hair. What did she call it? She didn't call it perm. She called it. No, she gave it a name that was. I don't know if she said silky or something like that. So I wouldn't do full on like perm, but I did get to a point where because I started her off with locks, where I did take her locks out and I let, we can press it and see how that goes. Girl, she got tired of that. Like I got one, because I had started her off with, she had locks. That's low maintenance. She go outside. She don't gotta, do all of these other things. She could go swimming. She don't gotta run somewhere when it rains. So then when she got other hairstyles, she liked it for a minute, but it just wasn't lasting. And now she absolutely loves her. She has hair like mine. She absolutely loves it. And I think that there is a part of motherhood, and I feel like this is one of those invisible aspects of motherhood, especially with Black motherhood, wherein we actually perform beauty it's not even vain, but it is teaching self-love. To like perform a certain aesthetic, right? To like if I'm wearing my big earrings, or if I'm have my hair up in a gele, or if I'm wearing my locks, it's a way of performing beauty in a way that says like, that just demonstrates to her like, I love me, and you know, you kind of like me, so you should love me too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to go over to the chats. Look like they've been over here talking back and forth to each other. So one person says, that's another question I have. And she put in quotations, remember, I don't have children, I'm an aunt. Why do Black educated women choose to isolate their kids by putting them in these white schools? She says, choosing neighborhood schools and helping your child and his or her friends to think critically after school through your influence. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to the first one that she said about why do educated women choose to isolate their kids by putting them in white schools. That brings up two things for me. I'm gonna let you speak on that. That brings up two things for me. One, it brings up several access of intersections, right? And then it makes me think of, it looks like somebody actually responded to it, but I'm gonna let you go ahead and respond, Tamara, and then I'll read back the comment that someone else wrote in the chat.
Okay, well, there's probably 100 different responses to that. Let me touch on a few. One reason is sometimes in urban areas, you have this question of safety. Either you're putting your child in an unsafe situation or you're putting them in a safe situation. So sometimes we have to balance, well, okay, you know, what influences are they going to get here versus keeping them alive? So it's a very hard balance for parents to make. And another thing, one that my mom struggled with, and I think ultimately for me, it was probably the wrong decision. I lived in the Bronx. It wasn't a high crime area, nothing like that. There were decent schools around, but I wasn't being challenged at the school I was at. When my parents and a lot of our parents came up, especially in the South, they lived a life that was such a struggle to get ahead and do basic things. Their frame of mind was thinking, let my child get the best education they can get. Forget all that social stuff, but I want them to get the best education they can get so they can advance beyond what I've done and beyond what other family members have done. Not really understanding, like, not really understanding the effects there, because I know what my mother knew was the type of racism where there's crosses burning, you know, in yards, or lynchings, or being spit on or cursed at. What I was going through was more of microaggressions, you know, but they weren't micro because they chip away at your self-esteem. They really do. But coming from where she came from, she couldn't identify that. That's something she never felt and something she hadn't seen. So for her, the situation was, you know, great. Nobody was being hurt. Nobody was throwing things at you on the way to school. So all she thought was, hey, let me send my daughter to this great school and she'll get a good education. And yeah, she might get picked on a little, but she'll be all right.
No.
So I think a lot of parents don't know what the children possibly can go through because they went through something that was different and more harsh. You know, when I say more harsh, I mean, you know, more overt.
Mm-hmm. And also, it's a lack of options. As an academic mom, a lot of times the university we're at does not have a Black population or area or Black school to send them to, right? Mm-hmm. Where we live, I mean, they have school districts and your child goes to the school in a district and it's just not a Black school. And a lot of the schools that are like these R1s or whatever, they don't have a high number of Black people in the area. You know, like Texas A&M is like 3% Black in College Station, you know? And so you don't have these schools that you could be Afrocentric schools that you could send your kids to. They just don't have access to that there, right? So you want your kids to go to a good school and, you know, this is the school that they have access to, so you'll send them there. It's not necessarily that we don't want them around Black kids, because God forbid, I would love my child to be around Black kids all day. I went to a HBCU in undergrad and I loved it. But yeah, so it's not that we don't want our kids around, Black people or want them to be isolated. A lot of times it's the options that we have and the resources at particular schools.
Tachi said that that's a huge consideration when you're in academia. Tachi, could you say more about that? What is it that you're saying is a huge consideration? Also, Steph responded to the earlier comment by saying that she made a choice to not put her son in a predominantly white school. There are high performing schools that are not mostly white. She graduated from one that's in the top 20 in the nation. I think one of the things that Tamara brought up was that that's not the case everywhere in terms of,
right.
It depends on like what environment you're in. And I know a woman who will tell you quick, she is, very much what you would call woke. But she also know that the schools are jacked up in her area. She'll be quick to tell you, I am not putting my baby in no jacked up school. I don't got nothing to prove.
Absolutely. And as a teacher, I've taught in some different schools, and there are there's some where she is now, I feel like is a happy medium, but there was one that I had her in that she couldn't thrive there. And it's, as a teacher and as an activist, I'm trying to fight the good fight for all of our kids to be able to have equal access and good schools and the resources. But no mom wants to make her child the guinea pig, and it is a very challenging situation, choice to make sometimes. And my daughter has been to maybe 4 or 5 different schools. So 4 of them she traveled with me through. And the one that she's at now, I like, it's pretty diverse. But some of the schools that I've taught in, absolutely not. And our neighborhood school here, absolutely not. I took her across town because I hung out at the park with those kids. And as a teacher, I understand the influence that, they can have. And as much as I'm an altruist and I want her to, be in there bringing a positive energy and raising the bar, it really is a tough balancing act of but not at her detriment.
Right.
Balancing.
Go ahead.
The balancing act she spoke of, I can totally relate, because there's so many things you take into account. I literally I had a pen and a paper out, trying to budget to say, okay, if I move here, how much am I gonna, how much is it gonna cost me to move to this place where I'll be able to send her to a good public school, versus how much would it be better for me to move to this place where it will be cheaper, where I'll probably end up having to send her to a private school. Okay, then where can I move that's diverse? That's diverse to where she'll see other Black children, if I have to live in this neighborhood. It's a really big balancing act. So I really hope no one, any of the viewers come away from it thinking that, it's kind of like parents have the idea that white is better, so let's just, let's send them here. It's something that I think every parent thinks long and hard about and makes the best decision they can with what they have.
Right. Nope, that's very real, very true, very much a balancing act. And yeah. I want to start off with Ariel with this next question. And it's really around more of, because I'm very much interested in the invisible work of motherhood, as you can tell, I keep saying this, because I think that there's so much more to the essence and the phenomena of Black motherhood that people don't understand or know. We talked a bit about some of the misrecognition that Black mothers experience by people automatically assuming one thing or another. And I think that Black mothers respond to misrecognition, stereotypes, people assuming things, by either just have a strong resistance to it, like I'm just gonna straight buck this. For example, okay, I'll give an example. Like if I say, I know that people have this idea that beauty is straight hair. So I'm gonna wear my hair as locked, just, you know, not only just to demonstrate that that's not the only thing, also because I like it, but this is my way of also loving myself in a world that tells me that I shouldn't, or in an environment that tells me that I'm not good enough, right? I'm like in the ways that we resist that, or even in the ways that we put our daughters in certain environments to cultivate not only their group efficacy, but they're also their self-efficacy in terms of like them relating to other girls, them relating to other Black people. All right, all of that context to say this. I believe that one of the ways in which we shape our children's identity, or we say something about who they are, is the names that we give them.
Yeah.
I've talked to some mothers, and some mothers have chosen names specifically that are either gender neutral because they don't want their daughter to be discriminated against because of their name, or it's culture neutral. Not really. I don't even know if a name could really be cultural neutral, but it's not a Black name. You know, they don't, like, I want her to be able to get a job. I don't want her to be discounted. And then there are people who chooses names like Azania. And I don't want to say this other person's name, daughter's name, because I don't know if she'll feel okay about that. But let's say Nzinga or Empress, or, you know, and none of you have to tell me your daughter's names, but I like to know a little bit, starting again with Ariel, about what went into the name that you gave your daughter.
So for me, it was about, I'm saying my daughter's name every day. Everyone else is saying my daughter's name every day. For the rest of her life, her name is going to be called at least once each day. I need a name. I picked a name for her to remind her of her purpose, to remind her of her destiny, to remind her of who she is. That was my thought process of naming her. I wanted to give her a name that she would remember who she was, where she came from, you know, kind of like Sankofa, you know, from our ancestors. And, you know, I just wanted her to be carried through this life and to remember who she was and where she came from. So a lot of thought and effort went into it. And, you know, I gave her a long name. She has 3 names. And, you know, I just wanted to make sure that she would be reminded of who she was each day.
Mm-hmm. Asia?
Well, her name was kind of chosen for her. So she, you know, I think you know my story, Rob, but I'll tell everyone else. So I found out that I was pregnant with my daughter while I was on my first trip to South Africa, and I was, you know, incredibly sick and couldn't figure out why. I went to the doctor, and someone came to me later and said that we were on an arts exchange program was the reason for the trip. And one of the South African students had told someone to come to me and tell me that I should name my child Azania. And I said, if it's a girl, I will consider it. It was automatic, like, oh, the nickname could be Zani. And when I looked up Azania, you know, I said it was the original name for South Africa, which they had told me. And then it said that it was a term often used by revolutionaries. And I was like, well, there it is.
Nice.
Right. And boy, does it fit. All right, Renetta?
My husband actually dreamed of our girls' names. He came up with them. It just came to him. And I know because we talked back and forth. I was like, oh, I want to name her Gabby. I like Gabby, you know, or Gabriella. He's like, oh, no. Everybody's named Gabby. That's kind of a generic name, you know. And so he came up with the name Kyla. And so I was like, oh, that's beautiful. So we went with that name, and we purposely didn't stay away or didn't try to name, because I know some people do it because they think that it'll make it easier for them to get a job and to go through school and blah blah blah. But I thought Kyla was a beautiful name. She's clearly a Black girl, and you know, that's just who she is, and that's who she will always be. So that's important.
Tamara?
Oh, I have nothing interesting to add to this. When I was pregnant with my daughter, I was only concerned with her being healthy, and I spent most of my pregnancy in fear. I had 2 pregnancy losses prior to her. So I told her, oops, sorry. I told her daddy, I said, you name her. I got bigger things to worry about. And that's what he did. So he said, well, he kept, you know, coming to me like with different names. I was like, whatever. And now she's got a pretty name. Her name is Jalen Trinity. Trinity's her middle name. And yeah, so that's it. I didn't care.
Yeah, I love it. I had a couple names in mind. I was reading Octavia Butler's Wild Seed. Pregnant, so her name was going to be Inyanu for a minute. Then I was like, all right, I'll calm it down a bit. And this is after I learned that she would be a girl. I kind of felt like I always knew she would be a girl, but I still also remember the name if she was going to be a boy. Her name was going to be Anwar Samir. I feel like Anwar Samir is still floating around somewhere. Maybe I'll be able to name somebody else. Because this is shut down. This is shut down. But I mean, I landed on Empress. I landed on that, and I'm pleased with it. When she learned what her name meant, when she was like 5 or 6, girl, that was it. That was a wrap. So that was kind of some of the thought that went behind that. The next question that I have for everyone, oh wow, we are past our time. I want to honor everybody's time, so I'm gonna try to see if I can, because I'm normally supposed to shut down at this time, but if you guys could roll with me until 10:45, can you do that?
Yes.
Does that work? Okay.
I absolutely can, but I need to plug in my phone. So
okay,
ladies in a second.
Plug that phone in, girl. Can't be having low battery. Not in 2017. So the next question that I have is, let's go with this. What are some of the greatest influences on your approach to motherhood?
Yes. Well, I think for me, I think I reflect on things that I gained from my grandmother and my great grandmother and my mother, and the things that I thought worked and were beneficial, and some things I wanted to change, in terms of raising my daughter. My mother wasn't really growing up. It's just not who she is, right? And so with my daughters, I make sure that I am that for them, right? My little daughter, my youngest, she still loves to cuddle to this day. But when my oldest one turned 1 year old, she was like, later, mom. She had no time for me. She did not want to grow up. No cuddles, no hugs. I was like, seriously? That broke my heart, because it's like something I really wanted to do, But so in that aspect, and also cooking has always been a major thing for my family. Like my great grandma would have recipes. I remember being like 5 years old and she teaching me how to make her marble cake. And so that was a big deal. And so I cook with my daughters and I teach them how to do those things. Right. So those are some of the practices that I have taken from my family and passed to my girls.
Mm-hmm. And what about you, Asia? What are some of the influences on your approach to motherhood?
I think the most influential is my mama. And we still live here. And I am so grateful because some women are like naturally maternal. And I can be like in my teaching, but I also have a very selfish part of me. And I have a part of me, especially with babies. Babies kind of, don't tell anybody, you guys, but babies kind of bore me. They bore me / scare me. So I was really, really grateful for my mom during that time because I was scared to death. And I'm still grateful for her because she reminds me to be patient and to be kind and gentle with my child during those times that we talked about earlier where I'm stressed and tempted to lash out and I get angry very easily and have a temper. And my mom is very peaceful and calm. And my father has also been incredibly influential. He's the one who, I called him and said, like, how did you deal with me? And, he said it was a lot of conversation. And that has been very influential for me, just remembering that it is a lot of conversation. I think my friends and my village, my community have definitely helped to influence me. My sister, who is also, for the person who was writing earlier and said they were an aunt, she is an aunt. She doesn't have children of her own, but she helps me. For years, she took my daughter every Saturday and kept her overnight. And she still does that maybe once a month. So she's been very influential in my daughter's life and in providing a balance that is very necessary for my child because I can be very laissez-faire, real free. And my daughter's been lucky that, my sister is much more structured and her teachers generally have been much more structured. So she gets kind of that balance that she's not getting from me.
No, that works. Aria, I know you're still early to the game, but you could probably still identify some of the influences to even your thought process around mothering.
Yeah, so I would say my mother, that's one of my biggest influences just in life in general. But as a mom, she was here from day one when my daughter was born. And my sister, I would always call her for, hey, what do I do with this or what do I do about that? Even my dad. So just my village. The people who I saw. The people who raised me. Then I have aunts and grandmothers who I look at and just their spirits really. My mom is like a really patient woman. So I said that I want to be patient with my daughter and, just, some different things that you pick up along the way. But I would definitely say my mom.
Mm-hmm. One person commented in the chat section. What did she say? She basically said she learned her parenting skills from by what her parents did wrong.
That's true too.
Right. I mean, with all of us, it seems like, of course, like our parents are having a great influence on our approach. And so, I mean, I think it's reasonable to believe that how we are approaching motherhood will impact how our daughters approach motherhood. And with that being said, what is something that you want your daughter? I'll start with you, Tamara. What is something that you want your daughter to pick up from you in terms of approach to motherhood?
I want her to definitely. One thing I want her to pick up is to do it her own way. There are things I wish, though. I would hope she would definitely take a nonviolent approach. Because I hear a lot of people say, you know, like, my parents hit me, so that's the way I do it, and I also hit my child. So those things tend to be passed along. You know, things bad or good are going to be passed along. So I hope that's something that she takes away, you know, from it and can take like a nonviolent approach. Um, I also hope she stays and remains a carefree Black girl. And I hope if she has a daughter, that she also raises a carefree Black girl. And what I mean by carefree is, you know, having control over your own body, having freedom, not feeling like you have to go through any lengths, you know, sitting in a chair for 7 hours, getting your hair tightly braided, you know, aesthetically. I just really want her to be carefree, model that and pass that on.
Mm-hmm. Renetta, and you?
Oh, I don't know. Some things that I hope that my daughter takes from my mothering, I would say the willingness to communicate, right? I think communication is a big thing when it comes to children and their relationship with their parents. A lot of children don't feel like they can go talk to their parents about anything. I think I felt that way growing up. I grew up in a very strict household. And so I think that my daughter, I would want her to feel comfortable with just coming to me about any problem and being able to talk through any issues that she may be having, and maybe she can continue that practice on with her kids.
Mm-hmm. What is something that you hope that you pass along to Zania about motherhood?
It's funny. I just gave her the curse last week, and I've used it several times, which is
I know what it is.
kids turn out to be just like you. And every time she gets on my nerves, I just like you. But I hope that she remembers how much time I spent with her, and that I really made sacrifices to be able to do that. And that I noticed a difference in her behavior and her demeanor when I wasn't spending time with her versus the time that I was. So I hope that she remembers how valuable that is and takes just the time to just be there for and with her children. And I hope that we talked earlier about advocacy, but I've tried to teach her to advocate for herself.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope that she teaches her children the same. And I hope that she takes the same thing that our friend Gwinnett, I think, said about communication. I hope that she takes that conversation piece that I got from my father and that I've tried to pass on to her. And I agree, nonviolence and kindness.
Mm-hmm.
That's a family value. So, and we joke with her sometimes because she is a little bit more mean than anyone else in our family right now. And she's 13. So I really, hope that she embraces that family value and passes it on.
Mm-hmm. Ariel?
One thing that I've tried to do with my daughter is really just kind of give her room to explore her world. And, that's something that I would want to continue as she grows to explore her world however she sees fit. And, I hope that she would pass that on to her daughter because, we're all so different. And what works for one person may not work for the next person. So just, really taking a step back and looking at her child and saying, okay, this is what my daughter needs, and being exactly what her daughter needs.
Mm.
I would like to, hope, I would hope that she would pass on, patience, love, nonviolence, all of that. Yeah.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I can't believe it's like over an hour and 15 minutes. Like this absolutely needs a part two. I didn't even get through all of the questions that I wanted to ask about advice to years and definitions of family and that whole thing. So hopefully we'll be able to have a part two. I want to take the time to thank everyone who stopped by to watch. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for making comments and staying engaged. If you are watching the replay, please do subscribe by clicking that beautiful red subscribe button so that you can be notified when I get a new video and I can continue to share content. I'm also trying to get up to 100 subscribers. I don't have 100 subscribers yet. So I'm trying to get that threshold. So if you are watching this, go ahead and, help us out. Subscribe or whatever. You know how we do. It's a village and all that stuff. I also want to thank our mothers, the panelists, who took the time out of their day. You won't believe all of us got kids. You hear how quiet it is? In everybody's house. That's
They're gonna think you got them locked up somewhere.
That's when we got it. You know what I mean? So thank each and every one of you for coming on and sharing your insights, your experiences, and everything. If you guys have any final thoughts, I'll let each of you get a final thought. If you have something that you're up to that you want to let everybody know about that you're up to, please feel free to do that. What's one more thing I want to do before? June 3rd, it's going to be Black Mothers in Academia. So it'll be a panel of Black mothers who are either first year recent graduate or they're currently in a doctoral program. Talk about grind.
Yes.
Right? So that should be interesting. So if you like this show, please do tune in for that one. It will be Black Mothers in Academia. It'll be Black mothers who are in a doctoral program. Now for our panelists, please, if you have any final thoughts, any final words of wisdom, or if you want to let us know what you're up to. I'm going to start with you, Tamara.
Oh, wait, don't start with me. I was still thinking on a question.
All right, I'm start with you, Ariel.
Okay.
No final thoughts. Yeah.
Okay, that's cool.
You guys are beautiful. Thank you, everybody, for joining me and Ra in this conversation. And two things I'm up to. I'm working on 2 books right now because I'm crazy. One is a follow-up to a romantic memoir, thinly disguised as a novel that the first version I produced, self-published, what was that, 9 years ago. So I'm working on the follow-up. It should be out in about a year. And I'm also doing a memoir on my teaching experience. The person who was asking about the schools earlier, you might be interested in that. So feel free to hit me up on Facebook or Twitter, and I'll keep you posted.
Renata, any final thoughts or want to let people know how to connect with you or anything you're up to?
Yes. Well, let's see. No final thoughts. I really enjoyed being on the show. This is my first time, so thank you for inviting me.
I hope you come back.
Yeah, and this is my first year post PhD as assistant professor. Yes. And I too look at Black mothers and I look at health disparities, right? What? So my research focused on obesity among Black women, looking at the impact of education or lack of impact that education has on reducing our risks of obesity and other negative health outcomes. So I'm working on some articles related to my dissertation. So that's
why you better work on them articles.
Somebody got to get 10.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
That's what's up. You got it now?
Yeah, I got some stuff
Okay.
now. So first, I wanted to say thank you so much for doing this. This was like just an amazing like sharing of sisterhood. I haven't really been part of any of these panels up until now, so it was really nice, and I just wanted to thank you for putting it together. I had one just random extra note. We touched on Village a few times, and I've been a foster parent before. I was a foster parent for about 3 years. I had three different foster daughters, and we gotta really be sure as we create our village to make sure that our village is protective. I think that's a balance that's really hard to do. We have to make sure our village is really protective because child abuse and especially sexual abuse is rampant in our community and all communities. So I want us to all be mindful of that as you're building your village, because all of our connections have connections. So yeah, it's like one thing I just can't stress enough because I've seen too many horror stories and lived through too many. So that's all I wanted to say, and thank you so much for having us.
That is real. Thank you again for everyone who's tuned in. This has been The Counter Narrative. This episode is Motherhood at the Intersections. You can reach me on Twitter at @Rasheem, Instagram @Rasheem. You can go to the website, thecounternarrativeshow.com to see any of the replays. You can also visit the YouTube channel, which you're probably here right now, and you can go ahead and subscribe and share it with your friends. Don't be greedy, share it with your friends. Don't be greedy, share it with your friends. All right. Thank you for coming out. Good night.